Welcome to the in-between,
where shift happens,
the moment between where we are
and where we are going.
We will ask all the questions,
maybe find some answers,
and generally work at being okay.
The mystery of the in-between.
In today's episode, we are going to talk about grounding in times of challenge. I think that's an appropriate thing, like for any time, right? I mean, I don't know that it has to be necessarily times of like this tremendous challenge, which I think sometimes we find ourselves in right now, but like just in general, like how can we like explore some of these grounding techniques and activities?
Certainly sounds appropriate.
Yes. Maybe it's just a little selfish on my part to want to do it, but anyway.
Yeah.
Before we get into all that, welcome everyone. If this is your first time or you're like 101st time, even though we haven't had 101 episodes yet, but the premise of this podcast is that one of us comes with a topic or questions and the other one doesn't know what those questions are. And so we're really just exploring the in-between. And that's that kind of, I don't know, sometimes the ad lib version of life. Like we don't know what's going to happen. And then we just kind of have to trust and step into the flow. And so this is what this podcast is all about.
The gooey middle.
The gooey middle, the messy middle, just stepping into the flow, whatever that looks like. And then creating space for other people to do that too. So are you ready? You look ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Cool. Well, I thought, like I said, to get to get us started, I would love if you could, just like from your own experience, like what does grounding mean to you? So we're talking about like, we're going to start talking about grounding activities in challenging times or ways to like do that. Well, let's first, like, what is that? What is grounding? What does that mean to you and your experience of it? And then maybe some go-tos for you in grounding.
Yeah, grounding, I think it really started to make sense for me because it was like for a while it was kind of one of those words where like it got used a lot and was like, I don't really know what that means. I think it really started to make sense when I realized it felt like a tethering. Like I was tethered to something solid. And when I felt, quote, ungrounded, it felt like that tether was like, at least momentarily snapped or removed. And it was kind of just like floating aimlessly in not a great way. Like, because sometimes floating aimlessly can be fun and exciting. But generally, like ungrounded, a sense of being ungrounded felt like floating away from.
Right.
But that tether, the groundedness is that tether to like, there's something greater than me. I don't know that I have to understand what it is, what that means. It could be anything. Like it could be life itself. It could be something moving things behind the scene. I don't know, whatever, right? But like being tethered to something greater than just my experience of life. That kind of put the idea of feeling grounded into perspective of like, oh, I am in touch with and connected to the bigger idea of what's happening here.
Yeah.
You know, and that has felt like various things at various times. You know, but that's really the perspective for me that like made it make sense, right? And so grounding kind of became the practice of like reconnecting, retethering, and it usually is like some sort of slowing down and like reminding myself, right? It's not really like I have to do much or create anything or be anything different. It's really just like a slowing down and like reminding myself of some sort of perspective, you know, like perspective on what might actually be going on. Like I don't know. Sometimes I pretend to know what's actually going on in life. I don't.
I think we all do.
Yeah, right. But whether I really know or not, it's like it's just kind of that I don't know, like that deep breath that kind of just like, okay.
Yeah, I love that. I think, for me, it's like, it feels like coming home. And
Mm.
so, and like home is that, or what, and I think our idea of home, whatever that means, but it does feel like coming back to that sense of, oh yeah, this is my place. Oh yeah,
Mm.
this is. Oh yeah, uh, I feel supported here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think for me, like groundedness is like coming back to that. And I guess it's kind of like what you were talking about, remembering. It's the same sort of thing. It's like a coming back to. So
Yeah.
it's not like discovering. We're not discovering groundedness, but I think
Right.
that we're coming back to that which we already have that we often forget,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially in times where things are swirling on the outside or even things are swirling on the inside. I think it's hard to remember. And I like how you said that stopping, slowing
Mm.
down, because I think like for me, it's like, when you're trying to make decisions and there's like all this stuff happening, if like I can stop and slow down and make the next decision and the next decision.
Yeah.
I think that feels like grounding too. I mean, that feels like
Yeah.
coming back to that thing.
I think I used to think that grounding was like something I had to, like it was a doing. There's
Mhm.
something that I
Yeah.
need to be doing that's going to make this feel different. I need to do something and this will change, that will change, I'll change or whatever. But yeah, it's really like just, I don't know what better word than remembering, but like, yeah, it is. It really is
Yeah.
like that thing that is already there that we can return to, that we can reconnect to, that we can remember, that we can just kind of remind ourselves of like, oh, right. This is what is, this is what is, you know?
So what are
Um,
some of your remembering things, or things that help you remember?
oh, um, God, I wish I had more. No.
I feel you. I understand that.
Yeah. You know, I mean, kind of, I feel like this is our answer for a lot of things on this podcast, but like getting outside
Yeah.
for me is almost always that great like reminder of like, oh, right. There is something else going on. It's not just me in this little room with these four walls and the connection to the internet, or me and this one conversation I'm in, or the emails, or the, whatever. It's like, oh yeah, we are part of this whole thing out here that's much, much, much larger than any one perspective. Um, and I don't even know that I need to necessarily realize that every time I go outside, but there is something to like stepping outside into a little breeze. I mean,
Yeah.
I think on like a cellular level, our body, it picks up on all the things going on that is, I don't know, there's like a wildness and to it, like the sense of the whole thing that's going on outside. So getting outside, I mean, literally just stepping out the front door can be at times a sense of grounding.
Yeah.
Um, and other times it's like, well, maybe it requires like going on a walk or going on a hike or going paddleboarding or going outside and playing pickleball or whatever. But like getting outside is a huge thing for me. Um, Probably because a lot of the rest of the time is here in front of the screen.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
our work, is connecting with people here. So I think that there is such that huge difference from sitting in this seat to going outside. Uh, reading has also been a huge, like, I don't know. It's weird because it's almost like it can almost seem kind of bypassy, but like stopping, like pausing the rest of the world for a couple minutes or an hour or whatever, and just like sitting down to read and like being immersed in something different, in a different world, in a different perspective on life, and in something totally made up, in
Right.
something that's in the past or something in the future, right? Like just a completely different perspective. Um, and I don't know that it is bypass. Like it's not an intentional. I mean, it is intentional. Like, let me put the world on pause, but it's not like an ignoring. I'm not pretending the rest of this doesn't exist. It's just like especially in those moments where I'm like, I need the rest of this to go away for a little bit.
Well, yeah, and it's rest. I mean, I think it's okay to rest. It's
Yeah.
okay to like escape. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that
Yeah.
because I think there's times we need that. I have like, for me, grounding is having a certain space to go to
Mm.
that I need. And I guess the same with like your nature, because outside is very much so for me too. But to have those like kind of ritual places that I can go to, like in the morning, you know,
Yeah.
we have a enclosed porch that has all the windows and you can see the birds, and we have all the feeders out there. And so, you know, to go out there and to sit on the couch that's out there and drink the coffee and read and
Yeah.
bird watch with the cat, which is our ritual every morning that she reminds me if I'm not out there in time. Right. And so it's something about like that for me, it's like these ritual, like, just, I don't know, very kind of ritual sorts of things. Like I start the morning this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I may read something different or, you know, but I'm always sitting in the same place, drinking, you know, the same coffee, those sorts of things. And that helps ground. And I've even noticed, you know, in when it's, you know, warmer outside, there's places outside, I do the same thing. So when I've noticed, like if I get overwhelmed or need a break, then I can go to that space. And it really is this, because I've already created it, that this is a place where I'm going to be like, seek to be more grounded or to connect or to rest.
Yeah.
Than just going into that space. It kind of like cellular memory, it kind of brings me back to that.
Yeah. You know, I as a musician, I think one of the, another really powerful grounding experience, although I don't know that I ever really thought of it this way. I mean, so as a musician, like practicing is a really big thing, and I used to practice way more than I do now, which whatever. So, you know, I'll own that. And so like years ago, I don't know that I really thought of it as grounding, but man, what more of a connective experience than like creating, I mean, probably any art, but like creating music, like creating sound where there was not sound before. I mean, there's literally like this whole vibrational experience that's, I don't know you can really put words to, but that has been a very, very grounding experience for sure. And also at times maybe not.
Well, and I think too, like any sort of repetitive like thing, right? Repetitive.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess that just, I mean, that kind of just like we slip and slide right into the convo about, I think that's the value in like spiritual practices or just practices in general. I mean, you don't have to label them. We don't have to label them anything, but anything that brings us back to center or brings us back home or helps us remember is a practice. And so I think it just then just supports the benefit of that. And it can look, I mean, it can look the same. Like oftentimes, like for me, exercising is the same way. You know, I exercise. I may listen to an audiobook while I'm doing it, or I may just not and just focus on, you know, how my body feels in the moment and all the things, right? And so it's I think any time where we can like centralize our attention, I think that the benefits of that create this groundedness, this like the tether, like you're talking about.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting that kind of brings to mind is like, I think all the spiritual practices that you're like, quote, supposed to do.
Yeah.
And how grounding they're supposed to be.
Right.
But you know, just how individualized a lot of this is.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, yes, I enjoy meditation, and it also is a practice that I have to like, I guess I'll say force myself to do. Like I have to like that's one of those, like when I mentioned a couple minutes ago about like doing. I need to be doing something. Like meditation is a doing form of trying to ground myself. Right. Or like
it can be, right? I mean, I think anything
which
can
is
be
fine. Yeah.
meditation, right?
And totally individual. Like like individualized completely. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people who it just is the easiest thing and they love it and they do it all the time and whatever. But like meditation can be very powerful for me, but it is certainly something that I need to like get myself to do and work at I don't know, you don't like work at meditating, but
Yeah.
like work at like getting into the experience of doing, right? Or like journaling or gratitude practices
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever. Like great. And those were for me, those felt like the doing. It wasn't
Yeah.
like I can just go be somewhere and just be in that moment. Like these are activities that I need to be doing. And I just
I'm too wiggly for sitting meditation. So I always have to do like a walking meditation if I'm going to do that. I'm too
yeah.
wiggly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not honestly, nothing for me is more meditating than hiking.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh my
it's,
gosh. Yeah. Like you're never more present than like walking across a slippery log over a creek. Or,
yeah. I
you know?
mean, of every little like movement and balance and
Yeah. Yeah.
was that a sound of a cracking log? Right. I mean, it's like all
Right.
the things you have to
Yeah.
pay attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, that's what it is, right? It's anything that brings us into that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
yeah, because then anything can be meditation, right? When you can really put that focused attention on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I think sometimes we do, well, I say we, meaning me, um, get caught up that it has to look a certain way. I know not so much now, um, but I used to get really caught up that it had to look a certain way. And if I
Yeah.
wasn't doing it in a certain way, or even at a certain time, if I wasn't, meditating for 30 minutes in silence
Yeah.
with a candle lit, um,
Uh,
at 5:30 in the morning, then I wasn't doing it right,
yeah.
whatever that
Yeah.
is. And now I've let go of that because, well, you oversleep enough times, then
You just beat
right,
yourself up about it, right? I mean, it's like, oh, I'm not enough. I didn't do enough. I whatever,
right.
whatever. Like,
Well, and for me, I think like we're talking about, it's really individual, and so it's like
yeah.
really listening to ourselves, our bodies, our minds. Oftentimes in the morning, I'll ask, what do I need right now? And
Mm,
sometimes it's different. Oftentimes it's the same thing, bird watching with the cat drinking coffee in the morning. Um, but sometimes it's different. Sometimes like, I'd really like to go on a walk, you know,
yeah.
that would be really supportive. And so I think that it's okay for us to like explore like all the different things that can look like. And we don't have to compare our experience to someone else's because not all things ground all people, right?
Yeah.
Not all things are home for all people. So it really does allow us to be, like you said, don't not to like be hard on ourselves or to be, critical of it.
Yeah.
Because then that's the opposite of grounding, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So what I always like to say this because for me, like this question then leads to like the bridge. So like what gets in the way of
Hmm.
not only of like feeling grounded, but like um exploring ways or practices that we
Yeah.
can that can serve to ground us.
Yeah. I have found it's really easy for me especially recently to just get like caught up in whatever the thing is, caught up in the doingness and the working and the grind
Mm,
and the craziness of whatever it seems to be exploding outside, getting caught up in and not even getting to the point of like, oh, I need to slow down or I need to take a
yeah.
moment or whatever. Um, I think that's probably the biggest obstacle. It's like if you don't ground, if you don't remember to slow down, or that feels like I don't know, like an obligation. I don't feel tethered when I don't remember to pause.
Yeah.
I guess is a better,
Yeah.
a clearer way to say that for me. Um, so I think that's number one. Is like just remembering to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And even, I mean, even that, we didn't mention that before, but even just like a momentary deep breath can be very tethering in an otherwise untethered moment. Um, I think other things that get in the way is like the, I don't know, the seemingly increasing speed at which life is coming at us,
Yeah.
I think that can make it challenging, because I think there is something to that of like, I don't know, there used to be space in between the things happening, and now they're like overlapping and happening at the same time, and it's just kind of crazy. Um, and so I mean that's kind of like the outside stuff that gets in the way. I think there's also like the inside stuff of like me beating myself up because it's supposed to look a certain way, and that just kind of untethers even further. Or um think basically like whatever. I mean, it boils down to, for me, I think it boils down to thinking it should look like something different.
Yeah.
All the thoughts I'm having right now are boiled down to that. Like, this experience is supposed to look like something other than what it looks like.
Yeah. Oftentimes I get addicted to the like the rush of the grind. You get addicted to the
Oh
I get
yeah,
this and this and this, and I'm busy, and like you
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
um we both complain about not we both. I said we, not you and I both, but we can both complain about having all the things to do and really enjoy having all the things to do,
Having
because
all
it
the things to
does,
do. Yeah.
right? It's
Look at
like,
me. Look at what I did.
look what I can do. Look at, I can
Yeah.
balance a plate on my nose while, dribbling a basketball, all the things. And so, and for me, I have historically, you can get addicted to the attention that one receives by being able to somehow
Right.
mysteriously balance all these things, but like secretly, like suffering, internally for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, I think that gets in the way, because then you don't feel like that you can stop and pause and
Mm-hmm.
remember,
Mm-hmm.
or there is time to do whatever. And so I think that's why I've tried to like divorce that idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was a
It's a big
messy
idea.
it was a messy divorce. Um,
Yeah. It
and
got that out.
really, really engage with the idea that I can pause, like I can take an hour if I'm
Yeah.
feeling that I need to grind. I can, all the things that we can do,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And nothing's gonna happen. Nothing ever. I mean, like slowing down and pausing and taking a moment, and I don't know. Yeah, just stopping what you're doing. Like, it's okay.
Well, and yeah, and then it does recharge us and allow us to then actually move and engage in the world in a different way, in a way that actually is supportive, and we actually may find that you're able to do more things, not that that's the goal,
Yeah.
but that you're able to navigate things a little bit more easily when you have those activities that ground you, or those
Yeah.
activities that you lean on in times of challenge. And let's be honest, everything feels challenging now. I don't know about you, but everything feels hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's why this conversation is more important now than ever, just because, not that it's like this earth-shattering sort of conversation, but I think it is, well, it is what we're talking about. It's groundedness. It is that
Yeah.
reminder, right? This conversation in and of
Yeah.
itself is that reminder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So something you just said made me realize that I think one of the other obstacles is permission. Like
yeah.
giving ourselves permission to pause, to whatever. Like, it's okay. You don't, I, I think for many of us, our childhoods were like seeking permission to, or rebelling against the need to seek permission or whatever. And then well into adulthood, a lot of us have not dropped that habit, coping mechanism, whatever it is. We're like still out here looking for permission to be who we want to be, to do the things we would like to do in life, looking for permission or whatever. And I think permission to pause, permission to take a nap, permission to breathe, permission to kind of whatever, do something you enjoy, is permission that we have to give ourselves, because we don't actually need permission, except we're like keeping ourselves from doing it because we think we do.
Well, and then honoring everyone else when they're doing the same thing, right? It's like we want to rest, but then we want people to be kind of like on at our beck and call when we need them. And so
Oh, well,
it's really seeing like the totality of our experiences,
yeah.
especially in relationship with one another, whether it's like any sort of relationship, is understanding the same thing that we're trying to actualize in our own life. We want to support someone else doing the same thing, because then that just enhances
Yeah.
everyone's experience and the ability to show up that way.
Yes. Yeah. I think a huge aspect of that is like this emergency culture, that every email, every phone call, every text message, every whatever is like some emergency that needs to be responded to right away, and everyone's supposed to have access to everyone else all the time, 24/7, immediately. It's
I
like,
read this
oh,
book where it talked about it's the part in our brain that senses danger and need to respond. I need to respond. I need to do something now.
mm,
Actually, that same part is activated when you hear a notification on your phone that you have a message or an email, like that
mm,
same that we are responding to those notifications from the same space. Our brain is from the same space as if we were
interesting.
responding to
Is
danger or something immediately that we need to
Yeah.
do. And so just think about how
Wow.
often you get notifications on your phone, whether I turned them all off because it just made me like, it made me just a mess. And so
Yeah.
it's,
Is that a learned thing, or is that like where you hear a ding and it's alarm?
I think it's a ding and alarm.
Wow.
It didn't say anything about being alarm. I mean, the research
Yeah.
was, it was like
Yeah.
that same part gets activated. And so
Interesting.
I
Hmm.
think, and so like, and so what do you do to combat that? Well, I try as much as possible just to have set times where I'll look at something. I'm gonna check
Yeah.
email this time, this time, this time. I always have that intention, and oftentimes it goes sideways, right? And so
Hmm.
I do have to stop and pause and remind myself, oh, remember, right? This is not an emergency. This is not, because
Yeah.
I can even feel my system getting activated, right? Because,
Yeah.
oh, this
Yeah.
person's emailed me. They're waiting for a response. All the
And
things,
then
right?
and then you ruminate and think about it for all night. Yeah.
Right, and so I was like, "Well, I might as well just go ahead and respond," right? And then
Yeah.
it's just this cycle,
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
so,
Yep.
right, and so all those, I think those things are what get in the way often, but they also, um, are a really unique opportunity for us to actually apply these groundedness
Yeah.
practices, and they can
Yeah.
and explore different ones, I mean, that's the fun of it, right? It doesn't have to
Hmm.
be the same thing all the time, but just ways that we can begin to come back home, breathe, create space,
Yeah.
kind of get out of this immediacy, kind of, you said, emergency sort of culture
Yeah.
that we have become uh, acclimated to, that we don't even realize it until we have like the emotional, physical, mental effects
Yeah.
of overload of that.
Yeah.
Well, this conversation has been very grounding for me. I don't know
Yeah.
about you.
Yeah.
Hopefully for anyone's listening. And if not any of the words that we've said are grounding, maybe just the words are like, oh, wait, how can I find grounding in my own life? So maybe this has just sparked some idea in our brains for us to continue this practice of groundedness, whatever it looks like for each and every one of us. So thanks for the conversation. Always
Yeah.
fun
For sure.
stuff. And I don't know, it always seems like this like layered experience. And we get to the end and I'm like, oh yeah, this is totally different than I thought it was going to be. And I have
Yeah.
a totally
Yeah.
different perspective on the conversation. So I appreciate you being in the in
Yeah.
between with us, because that's where a shift happens. And so until next time, we hope a lot of shift happens for you.
Nobody really enjoys being in the in between.
But thanks for being here anyway.
We may not have found all the answers,
But certainly some. And maybe more importantly,
a little shift has happened.
and the beauty of it all is that we are not alone in the in between.
So until next time, we hope a lot of shift happens.